Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Chicago Conservative Live. And today we are going to be reacting to this guy I know, man, named Caffeine Zombies. He hangs on the liberal side, so we kind of have our debates, but when it comes down to it, really, we don't really have any issues. He's not one of those crazy liberals that you normally see. So, we just gonna be reacting to this video that I found a little interesting. I never really seen it until now. Well, I never really came across it until now. But he says, was Abraham Lincoln a Republican? Which is a very interesting question because I mean, when wasn't he a Republican? So, I mean, let's see if we're gonna learn something, guys. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and we finna get right to it. So let's give you the floor, Caffeine.
Welcome and hello. Today's question is, was Abraham Lincoln a Republican? I picked this question because it crops up regularly by people
I'm not gonna lie. That question is hella clickbait, bro. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna cut you off.
who are curious, by those who want to use this fact to argue a modern political point, and I guess others. Let's bury the presidential top hat. Yes, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. But wait, not so
Okay.
fast. It's a lot more interesting than that. Abraham Lincoln didn't start off as a Republican. And this is important if we want to figure out what did Lincoln actually believe in terms of policies. After all,
Okay.
he didn't get much of a chance to initiate or sponsor more typical bills due to his time in office being focused on the Civil War and then otherwise cut short. Lincoln started as a member of the Whig Party and didn't join the Republican Party until 1856. To get an idea of why he joined the Republicans, let's go back a bit further and find out what the Whigs were all about. The
Okay.
Whig Party started way back in the 1830s. It was specifically formed to go against Andrew Jackson. Yeah, that guy. Even though Andrew Jackson was a Democrat, many in the party disagreed with his policies for good reason, and
Because he was a Democrat. What do you mean, even though he was a Democrat? Like, bro, they're bad. And like regardless of what do you think about them?
broke off to join what was called the Anti-Masonic Party. As they did that,
So
they
you're proving my point once again, because if he was with the Whig Party to rebel against Andrew Jackson, which is a Democrat, I mean, what's the confusion here, my guy?
reformed and were known as the Whig Party. The Whig Party named itself after an anti-monarchy party from back in England and opposed Jackson's treatment of the Native American populations, and had also many abolitionists in their ranks as well. It is no wonder that they also opposed the Southerners at the time, who were largely part of the Democratic Party, due to the South wanting to keep and expand slavery. In 1850, when the South succeeded getting
And
the
the South were Democratic.
Fugitive Slave Act pushed into federal law, the Whig Party was the only prominent opposing voice standing against it, with a then growing number of Northern Democrats who were also disgusted with the pro-slavery stance of the Democrat Party. But it got worse. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed. This tore the most popular party at the time, the Democrats, in two. The Democrats split along mostly regional lines, with the Northern Democrats further upset because this bill was passed, because had it failed, expansion of slavery would have been an impossibility in any future state being brought.
I already know where he going with this, bro. Man, okay. So now the Democrats, now there are two different types of Democrats now, right? Okay.
Into the Union. Southern Democrats, on the other hand, were wanting this act to be passed to allow for states to continue to add to those that practice slavery. This act passing led to mass violence between these groups, and those fights were known as Bleeding Kansas. which now looks kind of like a mini version of the Civil War. The
Hmm.
Whig Party tried to stand against the power the Southern Democrats had solidified, but shortly after,
Ooh, you keep proving my point, bro. Okay, you're basically saying the Whig Party was the first version of the Republicans, bro. They rebelled against Democrats, bro. At the end of the day, they are Democrats, bro.
the act passed, the party failed entirely. So you have this culmination of events.
Oh
The
my
Whig
god.
Party that Lincoln belonged to had failed, the Northern Democrats who had helped to form the Whig Party were growing more and more upset with the Democratic Party in general because of the Southern Democrats,
Man.
and enter the Republican Party.
Right.
They
So when
caught
thank you. Like, are you gonna get to the point, the part where the Republicans really abolished slavery, gave us the right to vote? Like, when are we gonna get into this? Stop lynchings? Like, come on, my guy.
wind of this fella who was speaking out not just against slavery's expansion, but rallying people to stand against slavery in its entirety. That's right. One Abraham Lincoln. In quick order, he was nominated
Oh
as the
my
Republican
god.
Party's candidate for the 1860 presidential election. But their ideas were actually incredibly unpopular, in the southern states at least, that practiced slavery. And those states wielded incredible political power. So, how did Lincoln win against these odds if his ideas weren't that popular? With the Democratic Party torn in two and having a lot of infighting, it created a divide for the voters. Now, the Democratic Party at the time were Southern Democrats, and they voted for Breckinridge, the nominee
True.
for the Southern
Yep.
Democrats. But some
Yeah.
still voted for Douglas, the Northern Democratic representative, who represented more of like a compromise position, you might say, when it came to slavery. They didn't want the expansion of slavery, but they weren't really speaking on abolishing slavery. This allowed Lincoln to come in and sweep a huge lead in the northern states, who were more and more against slavery than any pro form of it, even if it was just expansion. So you have to keep in mind the three parties were far more the same than they were different, except when it came to slavery. That was the only issue that clearly divided these groups,
Hmm.
but it was a strong divide. For instance, Lincoln took zip, zilch electoral college votes from the South because of that divide. But the 180 that came in from the North was enough for him to win in a landslide.
Hmm.
Though he still wasn't the popular choice. He only took about 40%
Because of
of
Democrats, bro. Like, can you acknowledge this, please?
the popular vote. So you could stop here if that's all that you wanted to know. Just say Abraham Lincoln was a Republican and how that even got started. But this radical Republican Party doesn't sound like the Republican Party I hear a lot of today. Just calling them radical might ruffle some feathers, right? And aren't they
No.
significantly more
I
popular
actually would argue that there are more radical leftists than there are conservative Republicans, but that's just my opinion.
in the southern states than the northern ones? How and why did that change? Stick around and we'll get there. So, quick history time. 1854 Republican Party is formed as a die-hard radical anti-slavery pro-civil rights party. 1860, hating that Lincoln won, the Southern Democrats split off and a snowball of secessions began happening with the states. 1861, the Civil War starts because of these very things we've talked about. 1865, the Civil War ends and a period known as Reconstruction begins.
Hmm.
Also, that same year, Lincoln is assassinated.
Yeah.
With Lincoln dead, Andrew Johnson, the vice president, takes
Yep.
over.
Yep.
He pardons all of the Confederate soldiers, and eventually the leaders and the plantation owners as well. Protections that were meant to ensure the continuation of black people
Wait,
being
what?
free
Go back.
ends in a period known
You said he what?
as president takes over.
Hold
He
on,
pardons
cuz.
all of the Confederate soldiers, and eventually the leaders and the plantation owners as well. Protections that were meant to ensure
What do you mean by he pardoned them? Do you mean that he continued to let them be slave owners and let them be, have slaves, because that's what he did. Now I don't know if what do you have to be more specific when you say pardon, bro, because um when Lincoln was assassinated, the guy that replaced him, he wanted slaves back in the picture. You do realize that, right? So you have to be a little bit more. You can't use words like pardon and not, really be specific with that.
The continuation of black people being free post Civil War, that were seen to be seen as equals under the law and maintaining rights to vote, were rolled back by Johnson,
Yeah, okay,
leading to what
okay,
were called black
okay,
codes in southern
okay.
states. These were
This
highly
is man. You gotta give it to caffeine zombies, bro. Straight up, you gotta give it to them.
restrictive laws meant to impede blacks from working, living freely in those southern states.
You
And there
gotta
was a
give it to them.
huge backlash to this. In 1868,
Is he a liberal? At this point, like, bro, are you even liberal?
even after being vetoed by Johnson, the Civil Rights Act becomes law thanks to Northern Democrats and Republicans getting together behind it.
Okay.
So things get kind of back on track. And into the 1870s, while blacks and former Northern Democrats made up the majority of the Republican Party, in the South, over a dozen black men were voted into Congress. Less
Bro,
than
he's
two
giving the facts. I've never heard a liberal speak like this. Just come on home to the conservative squad, man.
decades after the Civil War had begun. During this time, though, the Ku Klux Klan rose to prominence, fueled primarily by angry non-black Southerners who saw themselves as suffering from the transition away from slavery and into a employment-based economy. And
Okay.
by 1874, the South was actually even in an economic depression that would partially spread to some of the rest of the United States. In 1875, with no federal response to Southern Democrats using violence to take control of Mississippi, the president at that time basically declared, without saying a single word, that Reconstruction had ended. Soon after, in 1876 and 1877, a series of negotiations takes place, and Hayes promises to return Southern states to their own control, removing federal enforcement and protections.
Okay.
If they pinky swore that they would continue to follow the Civil Rights Act and maintain equal rights for black people in their states. And guess what? They promised, and everything was fine since. Actually, it became instantly clear that the South would roll back any changes Reconstruction had created and institute new laws against black citizens. These would be known as the Jim Crow laws. I guess they had their fingers crossed behind their back, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, where is
So
this
do.
all going? Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. This terrible Johnson fellow was a Democrat.
Where is
Democrats in
this
the
all
South
going?
wanted to do everything they could to oppress black people who were primarily Republican at the time. This all is sounding strange because it seems kind of the opposite today, at least for affiliations to Republicans and Democrats. The South is primarily Republican and the North Democrat. So again, how? Well, a lot more happens in this time period, but a couple of key points over the next nearly 100 years shows how the parties shifted.
Okay.
In 1948,
Okay.
it sort of culminates behind a Southern Democrat supporting and signing equal rights protections into law, President Truman. With large support from Northern Democrats and Republicans, he was able to get these bills into legislation. Due to their discontent with these equal rights legislations, the Southern Democrat Party actually splits from the rest of the Democrats, even walking out of the Democratic Convention and become what is known as Dixiecrats. In 1964,
Mm,
Lyndon B. Johnson, another Southern Democrat, signs and promotes the Civil Rights Act.
mm.
In 1965, he does the same thing for the Voting Rights Act. What's interesting is
Bro, that's pandering, bro. Their agenda never switched. Bro, come on, man. You ain't never just say LBJ. Come on, my guy.
is if you look at which states supported these pieces of legislations and which did not, it doesn't seem as bizarre as the parties who are putting them forward, because you can see a long historical divide stays consistent. And the states who would have been the South during the Civil War era, they voted almost 100% against the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, while all the northern states who would have been part of the Union voted for them within the Democratic Party. At this point, you could still just sort of stop for a moment and think, well, what was happening with the Republicans? Well, they primarily voted for these, and they were actually some of the largest groups of people who did vote for these pieces of legislation. But there was a noticeable chunk of the Republican Party who seemed sympathetic to the Dixiecrat messaging. And there seemed to be an opportunity there for the southern states.
Okay.
Through the 60s and 70s, it was clear that the South still it was suffering from the economic woes that abolishing slavery and Reconstruction caused and wanted to avoid them in the future. And the Republican Party saw a chance to win them over. So another staple of history started to pop up in another way. If you look back before the Civil War, Southern Democrats said they were pro-slavery because they were the party of states' rights. Means they could keep slavery and other states could do whatever they wanted. And after Reconstruction started, when Andrew Johnson withdrew federal powers protecting equal rights, it was a pro-states' rights move. Or when the president at the time, President Hayes, made a compromise, he withdrew federal powers, reinitiating or establishing states' rights. Dixiecrats walked out of the convention over equal rights bills, and why people turned on the Democratic Party in floods after the mid-60s was all over states' rights. Keywords now that have been used throughout history by government officials in the United States to indicate they want to allow states to determine what civil rights or equal
Abraham
rights
Lincoln,
means to
or
them,
are we
which
doing
has historical.
history on Dixiecrats and Republicans and Democrats? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, okay, Abraham Lincoln started out with the Whig Party. Okay, like I get what you're saying, but he finished out as a Republican and he basically freed the slaves and he gave us the right to vote. I mean, come on, man. I understand. I appreciate the lesson, but
Historically ended up in the disenfranchisement of minorities, especially black people in this country, starting with enslavement to black codes, Jim Crow laws, poll taxes, and
and I'm gonna have to definitely fact check that when it came to the Dixiecrats and how the Republicans found that as an opportunity to. I'm listening, man. Trust me, bro. Everything you saying right now, I'm definitely gonna fact check this for sure.
more. So yes, Lincoln was a radical Republican, voicing his desire to have federal powers make people free who were not at the time. He started the process. Democrats continued it in the 40s, 60s, and ongoing. I would be remiss if I didn't point out, I do not think that if you are a Republican, you are racist. Nor do I think that if there's a policy coming from the Democrats, it is in some way inherently better than something promoted just because it's from the Republicans.
My thing is, caffeine zombies. If you know all of this, why are you a Democrat? I'm not sure if you are a Democrat or not, but why are you like? Why are you liberal? Like, I don't understand. If you know all of these things, if you know being a Republican don't make you racist, if you know all of these things are true, like, I'm gonna really have to ask him this, guys. Like seriously.
What I think is that if you're talking to a person who is trying to tell you that Lincoln was a Republican, so you should support the Republican Party today, especially if they are talking about civil rights issues, they either don't know the history of Lincoln or they're trying to trick you.
Wait. Whoa. Okay, now you gotta slow down. now you got to slow down there, bro. Because I mean, at the end of the day, he was one of the first Republicans to ever, what I'm saying, do this. And he is a Republican for a reason. Because he didn't want to be with the Democratic Party. So it's like at this point he's with the Whig Party. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna be with the Democrats who don't support this. And then he's just gonna say, and then he just say, you know what? We're just gonna be Republican. Like, okay, I understand he didn't start out as a Republican. Okay, nobody starts out as anything. But it's like at this point, don't warp the people's minds and make it seem like, oh, Abraham Lincoln wasn't a Republican. Like, come on, dude. Like, what do you mean they're trying to trick us? He was a Republican.
You hear someone say something like that, or states' rights as it pertains to civil rights, just ask yourself, WD, what would Lincoln do? He supported, promoted, and died for the idea that equality isn't different in each state, that it means the same thing everywhere, and federal powers are the only way to guarantee the equal treatment of all people under the law. He did not trust that power in the hands of the states for good reasons then, and those stay good reasons now.
This video is brought to you by Caffeine Zombies.
Hey,
Coffee's so good, it'll wake the dead.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't know it was an actual thing. Okay, guys. So that's the end of that video, man. And you know what? I got a few things to say. Man. First, I'm going to just ask this question. Are you a Republican or a Democrat, dude? Because at this point, you just made Abraham Lincoln look like he just made this guy look like a rock star. If I'm gonna keep it a band-aid with you, man. Like, I understand he didn't start out as a Republican. And this was great information, by the way. Thank you for this video. I have, you know what I'm saying? You learn something new every day. But it's like, dude, you saying that they're trying to trick us. I don't really think that was a good choice of words there, bro. Because like at the end of the day, the Republicans is what he ended out as, bro. He didn't claim the Whig Party. He claimed the Republican Party. And, he was killed by John Wilkes Booth, man, who was a Democrat, by the way. And you basically just made the Republicans look good. So I'm not sure what's going on here, guys, with Caffeine Zombies. We might have to ask him to come to the conservative squad because you know what I'm saying, he just made Abraham Lincoln look very, very well. He's pointed out like that he defended the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which gave us the right to vote, which gave us the right to not be slaves, and gave us the right to be actual citizens. You know what I'm saying? So, giving us the right to vote. The Republicans fought for all of this stuff, guys. I don't know why you guys are always thinking the Democrats are good. They've never been good. They're still not good. All the Democratic cities right now are in ruins. They are literally garbage right now. Look at what anything the Democrats touch literally goes in flames. I'm gonna just be honest with you guys. But that's the end of this video, guys. Make sure you guys check out Caffeine Zombies because you know what I'm saying. You don't learn a thing or two over there, man. I will give him this. He's not one of them crazy liberals, man. Do not let the cats fool you guys, for real. And you know what I'm saying. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. And we might be coming back with something, a little spiritual, guys. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna really like have to get permission for this next video that I'm trying to react to, but it's gonna be a real deep one, guys. That's all I'm gonna say. So make sure you guys like and subscribe, man. Tune into the next video, and I am out. Peace.